I dumped my pathetic husband, Kevin, for a young student. She took all his assets, and now she lives a lavish life. My husband and a female university student were secretly holding hands at an action movie premiere. He took off his wedding ring, but a passerby snapped a photo and posted it on social media, publicly criticizing him. I frantically messaged the poster, asking them to delete it. The poster misunderstood, thinking I was his mistress, and was ready to unleash their pen as a weapon. All I could explain was, no, that's not it. I'm his wife. Because a habitually cheating scoundrel, like my husband, deserves to be stuck with that little vixen for the rest of his life. Tonight, my husband, Kevin, mentioned Selena's name for the 8th time since he walked in and changed his shoes. He had been chattering nonstop. Even while eating, he wouldn't stop prattling about her. Oh, she kept pestering me to help her register for an excellent project, but then she overslept on presentation day. Young people these days are really strange. He grumbled, yet a tender smile bloomed on his lips. I paused, chopsticks in hand, for a second. For some reason, I felt this man was no longer worthy of me. Kevin is a young and talented university lecturer. The girl he mentioned is Selena, a university student he supervises. I've seen Selena in activity photos my husband posted on social media. She's a girl with almond-shaped eyes, always standing next to him, always smiling widely. I can't pinpoint the exact moment I felt something was off. Maybe it was because Kevin started mentioning Selena's trivial matters more and more often. Maybe it was because he participated in activities he used to scoff at, like taking souvenir group photos. Maybe it was because he'd stop in the middle of a game to reply to her messages, even if it was just about which milk tea was better at the cafeteria. Someone like that can even get into university, huh, dear? My mother-in-law was eating, her words still slurred, but unable to hide the sarcasm in her voice. My sister-in-law, Nina, you still don't have a job, even after graduating from a mediocre university. She then added sarcastically, well, asterisk, she has a rich father who's a vice principal, so it doesn't matter how scatterbrained she is. Look, Nina has only been living with me for a few weeks, and she already clearly knows about Selena. My mother-in-law, hearing this, glanced at me with a vague, meaningful look. I didn't understand, and I didn't want to. I had good news and bad news to announce. The good news was that I was getting promoted, and my salary would significantly increase next year. I would even receive employee stock options. The bad news was that after the promotion, I would have to move to the Philippines to help the company develop its business in the newly established Southeast Asian branch. Of course, it meant starting from scratch. The company's current business line would be fully optimized. If you don't accept the transfer, your current position will no longer exist. Naturally, that position will be offered to someone else. The HR department informed me this morning in an icy tone. At that moment, my mind was still stuck on the photo my husband had just posted, 2 milk tea cups placed side by side. It took me a long time to realize I was about to be laid off. But I was someone who always tried my best in my rank. During the good market times, I often worked through the night to meet the demands of international clients and suppliers. I even had to shower in the office bathroom, and I had led this business line through difficulties. Faced with my barrage of questions, my superior sighed, "This is the impact of an unfavorable market, not the fault of any specific employee. Not your fault. Besides, the company has also considered your excellent performance. Haven't we given you a choice?" The choice I received was to be sent abroad alone, to continue working hard and sacrificing myself to help the company develop a new branch from scratch. I pushed the door open and walked out. My superior called after me, reminding me to quickly respond to HR. After a few minutes of calming down, my determination from the meeting with my superior had halved. The job market over the past 2 years hadn't reached scarcity levels, but it was almost like a period of widespread unemployment. Many young graduates couldn't find jobs. So, for someone like me, who held a relatively high position, being thrown out would definitely make it hard to find a new job. Because right now, there are so many talented people, layers upon layers, and they are willing to accept lower salaries than mine just to get a job. Kevin's job seemed prestigious, but the numbers on his pay slip were very modest. On top of that, my mother-in-law had no pension, and my sister-in-law still relied on our family. I was the financial source of the household. Luckily, The house we lived in had been fully paid for by my in-laws, so I didn't have to worry about mortgage payments. Since getting married, we had also saved some money, so it wasn't a complete surprise. However, whether to immediately refuse the transfer, I still wanted to discuss it with Kevin. But right now, I no longer wanted to discuss it. I suspected he would try to persuade me to accept the transfer. Then, I would have to work hard overseas to earn money for the family, while he happily spent time with the vice principal's daughter. As for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, those two had already subtly hinted at me with sarcastic remarks. It's so hard to find someone as talented and handsome as Kevin in our family, and he worked so hard to buy a big house in the city where every inch of land is worth gold. Originally, he only considered beautiful, wealthy girls, but who would have thought my brother was so busy with his PhD that he missed his chance? He had to go on blind dates with other girls. So pragmatic. A house isn't enough, they also dig into my brother's salary and even his family's conditions. My sister-in-law is so lucky, she almost became an old maid. This was the first time Nina had come to my house. She looked around like she owned the place and didn't forget to mock me. If Kevin can really win over Selena, the Ha family will definitely enthusiastically support him in upgrading. I have something to say, I'm about to be laid off. I put down my chopsticks, cutting short their fervent discussion about Selena and her father, a story the three of them were engrossed in. My mother-in-law froze, as if trying to digest the meaning of laid off. Kevin turned to look at me, about to speak, when Nina cried out, "What about the house loan? The house loan? Hasn't this house been fully paid for?" My mother-in-law quickly elbowed Nina. She, too, realized her slip-up and forced a laugh, saying, "I misremembered." I looked at Kevin with suspicion. A fleeting confusion crossed his face, but it was immediately replaced by worry. "Why so sudden? When is your last day? What's the compensation plan?" As expected, what he cared about was money. Hearing the words, compensation, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law also perked up their ears. I shook my head and said, "There might not be any compensation." My mother-in-law slammed her chopsticks onto the table with a harsh clang. Then she continuously complained. Working for a company is not as good as having a permanent position. No matter how big the company, or if you're a manager, they can still fire you whenever they want. How many times have I told you, taking care of your husband and raising children is the most important thing? All of it has been neglected because of your endless work. The anger in my heart flared. Last year, when I used my year-end bonus to buy a Tesla, and Kevin took her for a drive, she didn't speak with this tone. "Mom, if I didn't have a job, how would I take care of my husband and raise children? Should we rely on Kevin's 6,700 yuan a month salary? Or maybe you and Dad could help us out a bit?" I calmly picked up my food and continued eating. My mother-in-law looked choked, only able to stare at me. My sister-in-law, who was still counting on me to buy her more designer bags, couldn't stand it. "Sister-in-law, then quickly find another job. Find one that pays more." I smiled faintly. "Oh, that's hard to say. I don't have a father who's a vice principal, you know." "For now, just find something. If we tighten our belts, we can manage for a while," Kevin said softly, consoling me, but in reality, he was shifting the responsibility to me. My mother-in-law saw him get up to clear the dishes, her expression subtly changed. She raised her hand to stop him. "Tiana, now that you're not busy with work, do more housework. My son is the breadwinner of this family now. What's that saying people often use? Ah, yes, men build houses, women build homes." After saying that, she even winked at Kevin, as if I, sitting opposite them, were blind. Kevin hesitated for a moment, seemed to get a signal from his mother, then put down the dishes and turned to me. "Tiana, I'll take Mom for a walk. You can do the dishes after you finish eating, okay?" I just hummed in agreement. Originally, we were just living day to day. If one earned less, one had to do more. Kevin and I met through a matchmaker. There was a time I thought I had, as Nina said, gotten a bargain. When I graduated and started working, it was during the boom of the IT industry. Everyone was working like mad. In the blink of an eye, I reached the age where I was mocked as an old maid. Perhaps because my parents were part of an arranged marriage, I had no beautiful illusions about marriage, let alone expectations for this future husband. But my parents became more and more insistent about me getting married. When my grandmother became critically ill, my father was like a man possessed. "If you don't get married, then your parents' duty is unfulfilled. That would make you unfilial. Your grandmother, even in her coma, kept mentioning you. Your uncle sighs every time your name comes up. You're really shaming your father. Your parents raised you to be this old, and all you can think about is yourself and your own enjoyment? How could I have such a selfish daughter? I looked at my father through the video call. He was crying and slapping himself. I almost suspected he was possessed by someone from the Qing dynasty era. Moreover, my grandmother never mentioned me. In her eyes, there was only my uncle and his son, her cherished grandson. My uncle, every time he met my father, used the fact that I wasn't married to anger him, just to force my father to voluntarily give up his inheritance rights. If Tiana gets married, her in-laws will take care of her. Besides, at this age, if she doesn't marry, what if she's old and lonely with too much money to spend? A daughter is like spilled water. Our family's assets must be left to Leo. Leo was my cousin's name, my uncle's only son, the precious grandson of the family this generation. He had been spoiled rotten since childhood. My cousin struggled with his studies, barely finishing high school, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get into university. After graduating from a vocational school, thanks to my grandfather pulling strings, he got a job at a small company. After a few days, he complained about being too restricted. He was fired before his probationary period was even over due to repeated unauthorized absences. I, on the other hand, passed the entrance exam to a prestigious university and got a job at a top tech company. I was promoted 3 times in 3 years. My monthly salary was equal to my cousin's annual salary. These achievements, in the eyes of others, were something to be proud of. But because I was a daughter, in the eyes of my paternal relatives, it wasn't worth a dime. Furthermore, because I wasn't married, they even thought I had no right to own personal property, even if it was money I earned myself. Initially, I didn't care about their twisted views. My father wasn't favored by my grandparents, so he didn't receive much inheritance anyway. Would they openly steal my family's money? Until my father cried and pleaded with me to seize the opportunity with Kevin because he had a new house that was fully paid for. Our family can afford a house. Why do you care if he has one or not? I asked my father, puzzled. He avoided my gaze and mumbled, "It's still better to have one already." A warning bell rang in my heart. I dragged my father to check our bank balance and statements. The result was the discovery that most of our family's savings had been borrowed by my uncle under the pretense of buying a house for my cousin to get married. "So where's the IOU?" my mother angrily asked my father, clinging tightly to him. My father pushed her hand away, stiff-necked, and retorted, "Family doesn't need an IOU. Isn't it because our daughter is old and not married yet? Otherwise, would I have lent him the money?" In the end, I chose to marry Kevin, but not because of his house. Partially, it was because my father caused minor incidents every 3 days and major ones every 5, making my life unbearable. The other part was because Kevin was tall, fair-skinned, handsome, and had a gentle personality. More importantly, he was a university lecturer. Men in finance and it often preferred to marry teachers for a simple reason: they could comfortably be the master of the house. With that joy, why couldn't a woman experience it once? My father, hearing this reason, empathized and sarcastically remarked, "Your job isn't that excellent, and you dare let your husband be a house husband. He made your mother a house husband her entire life. How excellent was his work? 20 years as a department head? Or what, tell me?" Ever since I learned he lent money to my uncle's family, I no longer treated him well, nor did I call him father anymore. He didn't deserve it. That money was my parents' entire life savings. I hadn't even planned to use it to buy my own house, but wanted to keep it for their retirement. Yet, he sacrificed himself to help others, hastily giving it to the family's only male heir. I wondered if he ever thought about whether my cousin would be grateful and repay them later, when he and my mother got sick and had to go to the hospital. Before marrying, Kevin and I drew up 3 conditions. I needed his personal credit report and proof that the house was fully paid for. After marriage, housework would primarily be his responsibility, or we would hire a helper. Naturally, my income would be transferred to our joint family account. He and my mother-in-law, after confirming I was an only child, happily agreed to these conditions. They even generously waived my dowry. It's only natural. My wife's family assets will sooner or later be mine anyway. Isn't what's mine also Kevin's? Why bother with a dowry? When Kevin handed me his credit report and house purchase documents, he even teased that we didn't look like we were getting married, but rather conducting a transaction. I was surprised by his words. "We're getting married through matchmaking. If not to discuss conditions, then what? Are we supposed to sit under the moon admiring flowers, or live in a straw hut with two loving hearts? I always thought that Kevin and I each got what we wanted, so our marriage continued peacefully. My income, as agreed, was transferred to the family account he opened. Every month, he would send me reports on our financial situation and major expenses. But then, Selena appeared constantly, and Nina's comment about the house loan. I began to suspect I had been too negligent in this marriage. What did Nina mean about the house loan? That night, lying in bed, I suddenly asked Kevin. He was holding his phone, smiling foolishly. Hearing my question, he instinctively hid his phone screen from my sight and looked up. Nina misspoke. You know how she is, her head isn't right. Don't take it to heart. Are you sure you're not telling me the truth? I turned over and closed my eyes. After marriage, I quickly realized Kevin's gentleness and shyness were only because he had no opinions of his own. Everyone has biases, even parents. My paternal grandparents favored their eldest son and grandson, while Kevin's parents favored their youngest daughter. From a young age, Kevin had been molded into an obedient son by his powerful mother. His sister was the one truly pampered in the house. His dismissive answer to me was certainly coached by his mother during their walk. Hearing his steady breathing from behind me, I opened my eyes. If I wasn't mistaken, there was a problem with our joint family account. I gently got out of bed, took Kevin's phone, and used his finger to unlock it. Looking at the meager numbers in the bank accounts under his name, the blood in my veins felt like it was freezing. Where was my money? Last month, he was still sending me screenshots of a 7-figure balance. Millions of yuan. I tried to stifle a scream in my throat. I went through each expenditure. Every month, he consistently transferred money to 2 accounts, automatically noted as installment payments. I opened WeChat. Just as I suspected, he had a small group chat with his mother and sister. Only messages from today were visible. He probably hadn't had time to delete them. The conversations made my heart clench, even more frightening than the numbers in the bank accounts. The house, supposedly fully paid for, was actually bought by the Ha family pooling money and borrowing. Unbeknownst to me, Kevin had mortgaged his mother's old house in the suburbs to borrow most of the money, then took out another small loan in his own name. These were all loans from informal financial institutions, leaving no trace on Kevin's credit report. No wonder Nina mentioned the house loan. Even if the money was paid off in one go, it was still a house loan. Kevin appeared to own a house, but in reality, it was a trick. Even if I found out, they weren't afraid. I had poured all my savings into this house. If we had children, wouldn't I just have to swallow my bitterness and live with it? The Ha family had schemed together, intending to keep me in the dark, and first urged me to find a new job. Professor Ha, are you asleep yet? Suddenly, a message popped up, interrupting my chaotic thoughts. It was from Selena. Before tonight, Kevin had been a pretty decent partner. He fulfilled our agreement almost 100%. After marriage, he rarely made me worry about household matters. From laundry and cooking to cleaning and shopping, he handled everything meticulously. To this day, I don't even know where to pay the electricity and water bills. I never dreamed of grand things like love at first sight, but I had to admit that with time, feelings grew. I had gradually grown to love him over the years, day by day. But he was the kind of man who used my savings every month to pay off commercial loans and sent me fake balance screenshots to deceive me. I stared at Kevin's sleeping face, feeling the familiarity, trust, and dependence I had accumulated over 3 years slowly dissipate in this slightly chilly spring night. I opened the message draft, then, a few seconds later, exited the conversation with Selena. She must have seen someone typing, then hesitating. No girl in her early 20s could stand the ambiguity from the object of her affection, so she expressed herself directly. Professor Ha, my friend stood me up for the movies. Are you free next weekend? My treat. Accompanied by an adorable picture of her sticking out her tongue playfully. I closed WeChat. Let Kevin enthusiastically reply to her tomorrow morning, because he didn't have many more happy days left. The next few days, I deliberately stayed home instead of going to the office, sighing and complaining. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law clearly looked worried. Even Kevin, who usually maintained a polite demeanor, started to become irritable. After all, tomorrow was the repayment date for this installment. Although pooling a few credit cards would be enough to pay it off, the whole family still needed to eat. What would they use to pay for the next installment? Informal financial institutions had no mercy. If one installment was missed, they would immediately come to the house to demand payment, using every means to squeeze money out of the debtor. "Aren't you going out to find a job?" Kevin angrily picked at the half-cooked food I had stir-fried. I said sorrowfully that my last day of work hadn't been determined yet, so it was inconvenient to look for a new job, and there was no compensation. "What do you care about your last day? Find one early and leave early," he impatiently ordered. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law exchanged glances, saying nothing, but they came up with a plan. If I still hadn't found a job before the next repayment date, they would have Kevin transfer all our assets to Nina's name, including this house, the Tesla, and the remaining savings. They wanted to devour all my assets, use me like a worn-out shoe, then kick me out. Because Kevin was the debtor, even if the creditors took the old mortgaged house, at least they could keep the new house and the car. That night, I installed tracking software on Kevin's phone. Yesterday, when I saw my mother-in-law propose this plan in the Hoff family's 3-person chat group, I almost chuckled coldly under the covers. Until now, Kevin hadn't expressed his opinion because if he did, he would become penniless, while Nina would benefit, becoming a little rich lady with both a house and a car. How could he be content with that? That night, I gently patted Kevin's restless shoulder and softly asked him, "Honey, are we having some financial difficulties?" At first, Kevin put on a brave face, saying he was just worried about me losing my job. I feigned remorse and then changed my tone, bringing up our family savings. "Our savings over these past few years are enough to cover our living expenses. Don't worry too much. Even if we have children, I can still get some help from my parents' side." Kevin's eyes clouded over when he heard about the savings, but then brightened when he heard I could still get help from my parents' side even without a job. "That's right. Is there any news about the demolition of that apartment building on your parents' side?" He sat bolt upright, looking at me with eager eyes. I waved my hand, telling him, "That house has been rumored for demolition since I was a child. How many times have I been a child now, and they still say soon? Who knows when soon will be?" Hearing that, he sighed and slumped back down. I gently asked again, "Are you really having some difficulties? We're husband and wife, united, we can overcome any hardship." Kevin looked at me for a long time, finally telling only the beginning and end of the story, informing me about the debt. However, he didn't mention buying a house as the reason for the loan, but only said it was to treat his father and Nina. My father had epilepsy and was hospitalized for many years. Last year, he passed away. It wasn't until then that I learned Nina also had hereditary epilepsy. She's unemployed and at home, without insurance, and the cost of medication and treatment is very expensive. He said with a remorseful face, swearing he hadn't intentionally hidden it from me, he just didn't know how to bring it up. "Tiana, I'm so afraid of losing you. You'll forgive me, right? But this house is our home, and the car was bought with money you earned. I definitely don't want to transfer the names to Nina. If I don't transfer them and can't repay the loan, the creditors will seize them. Can you ask your parents for help?" My parents, he referred to were, of course, my parents. Wonderful. He had already siphoned off my money, and it wasn't enough. Now he wanted to drag my parents into it too. "Emmett," I feigned difficulty, "the debt is too large. My parents, I'm afraid, can't help. You know my family's situation. My grandmother passed away, leaving 2 shops to my eldest uncle, and my father only received a 40-square-meter apartment unit. As for savings, needless to say, most of it was taken by my eldest uncle's family." Kevin knew this, but hearing it again still made him furious, to the point of wanting to immediately go to my eldest uncle's house to demand the money. My mother has humbled herself many times to ask for it, but not only did she not get a single cent, she was also mocked and ridiculed. My voice had started to choke up, as if I were about to cry. Kevin rarely saw me so weak and helpless. His protective instinct was immediately activated. He spread his arms and hugged me. "Don't worry, I'll figure something out. You also need to quickly find a job. We absolutely cannot let our house and car be transferred to my sister." I looked up at him, tears welling in my eyes, saying I didn't know when I would find a job. "We need to find a definitive solution, a fake divorce." Kevin repeated my words hesitantly. I nodded vigorously, showing him the news articles and legal documents I had collected over the past few days. "Transfer the house and car to my name, then we'll go through the divorce procedure to avoid the debt." He was still a bit skeptical. "Yes, just like transferring it to Nina. We'll sign a separate agreement stating that this is our joint property. You don't have to worry about not getting it back," I stated firmly. But I didn't rush him to make an immediate decision. Instead, I pretended to be concerned and advised him to consider it carefully. He seemed a little swayed, nodding and saying he needed to think it over. The next morning, I opened the monitoring software and was not surprised to see Kevin had gone to talk to his mother about this. Of course, my mother-in-law leaned more towards transferring the house and car to Nina rather than to me, an outsider. But the more his mother tried to stop him, the more Kevin felt she was being selfish, trying to steal his possessions for Nina. But he was being selfish. He not only wanted to seize all the assets, but also wanted to win Selena. There was only one step left between him and Selena. Selena occasionally used her admirers to tease him, making him ask, "What do you think of me?" Selena played hard to get, saying she didn't want to get involved in another family's affairs. Her father also absolutely wouldn't allow her to meddle with someone who was already married. So, divorcing me would allow him to openly pursue Selena. If it truly succeeded, he would get half of my assets and marry a rich and beautiful girl. Two birds with one stone. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I was even more eager than he was, praying they wouldn't drag out their pure love game any longer. Because my family's apartment building was indeed about to be demolished. My grandmother passed away not long after I got married. The inheritance she left to my eldest uncle was 2 shops in the city center, generating tens of thousands of yuan in rent each month. My father, on the other hand, received a 40-square-meter apartment unit in a prime location. But it was an old public housing unit with no ownership rights, dilapidated, unsellable, and no one wanted to rent it, even though the location was always rumored for demolition. But it had been over a decade with only rumors and no action. The day I returned to the company to sign the transfer contract, my mother called, saying a close friend on the resident committee had revealed a secret. The demolition plan would be announced next Friday. I was startled. If my eldest uncle's family heard this news, who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? "Mom, prepare the documents to transfer the apartment's tenant rights from Dad to me, okay? Once the documents are ready, don't go to work immediately. Wait until I arrive before you handle it. Remember, Mom," I instructed her repeatedly. Seeing me return home, exhausted and sluggish, Kevin no longer hesitated. I still hadn't found a new job, but the repayment date waited for no one. Nina was increasingly urging him to go through the asset transfer process. Taking advantage of my mother-in-law taking Nina for her regular checkup, Kevin dragged me to the Civil Affairs Bureau. We heard that we had to go through a 30-day mediation period to get a divorce certificate. He lost his temper. "She and I are divorcing voluntarily. What mediation do we need?" The staff at the counter saw me and nodded in agreement, saying, "Then you can consider suing for divorce. Court mediation only takes about a week." "Sturha, are you truly leaving empty-handed?" The mediator looked at Kevin over her glasses, asking probing questions. Only when Kevin confirmed it did I relax my tightly clenched hands in my sleeves. Such a good man, worried about you losing your job and income, so he agreed to leave you both the house and the car. Why can't you two just live together? The mediator whispered regretfully as she handed me the mediation agreement to sign. I smiled faintly. "This good man is all yours, ma'am." "Do you want him?" The mediation agreement would take 7 days to be issued. Only then could we proceed with the asset transfer. Kevin was afraid his mother and sister would find out and cause a fuss, so he kept it a secret from everyone. As for me, I also didn't tell anyone, to ensure everything went smoothly before the transfer was finalized. Unexpectedly, trouble didn't happen at home, but outside. Kevin said he had school business and left early on Saturday morning. I knew perfectly well he was going to the movies and then an exhibition with Selena, but I said nothing, acting as usual. I even helped him pick out a stylish, off-white, casual outfit. I happily sat at home, calculating that I would receive the agreement on Monday. Haha. A phone call from my cousin shattered my peace. "Hey Tiana, are you and your brother-in-law divorced?" Leo's voice held no concern, lazy like a venomous snake lying in wait. I was flustered and opened the video my cousin had just sent me. It was a video posted by a Daoyan blogger half an hour ago, kindly reminding, "Wife of the man in the off-white suit, your husband is cheating. The mistress calls him Professor." In the video, a couple sat next to each other in a movie theater. It looked like the movie had just ended. The two were leaning close, hand in hand. Suddenly, the girl seemed to notice something, snatching her hand away from the man. "Didn't you say you were divorced? Why are you still wearing your wedding ring?" the girl said in a sweet, feigned scolding tone, pretending to walk away. The man quickly pulled her back, hastily removing his ring and apologizing profusely. The faces of the two weren't clear in the video, but acquaintances could still recognize the man as Kevin and the girl as Selena. In my heart, I cursed. How useless, dating and still annoying passersby. I quickly gave my cousin a vague answer, saying Kevin was at school and he must have mistaken someone else. Then I immediately messaged the original poster privately, asking her to delete the video. The poster was online and replied instantly with 3 question marks. "You're involved, aren't you? Are you that girl? You know you're a homewrecker, but you dare to do it and not admit it, huh? Want me to expose you?" That curse hit a nerve, but now was not the time to be angry with the unfaithful. I had more important things to do. I quickly explained that I was the wife of the cheating man in the video and sent her my marriage certificate with names obscured. After confirming my identity, she deleted the video and added angrily, "Are you going to continue playing dumb? Do you need my help?" I replied with a simple, "Thank you," saying nothing more. I believed in her enthusiasm and integrity, but besides patiently listening to my complaints, she couldn't help. Moreover, she had no responsibility to solve my difficult situation. Anyway, I was very grateful to her. Since childhood, I wasn't good at relying on others, and at the same time, I hated people meddling in my life. So, my grandmother always said I was cold, not a good woman. I didn't lend money to my cousin because I had no feelings. I didn't want to get married because I feared hardship, and I avoided having children because I craved enjoyment. It was as if a woman who wanted to live happily was selfish. If she didn't sacrifice herself to nurture her husband, children, and siblings, she was evil. This kind of reasoning was truly moral kidnapping. In that case, I'd rather continue being a bad woman than live up to such a standard of a good woman. Even a bodhisattva couldn't endure it. The monitoring software notified me that after I refused him, my cousin had contacted Kevin. "My sister is naive, but I'm not stupid. The person in the video is you, and that girl is a student at your school, isn't she? Teacher-student romance and cheating. I'll report it to the school administration." Leo didn't want to help me seek justice. He had seen the recruitment information I shared on my social media a few days ago. Kevin's university was hiring contract employees. Although not official civil servants, working at a university was both relaxed and stable, and it sounded prestigious. Last year, my cousin was divorced by his wife for involvement in soliciting prostitution, leaving him penniless. My uncle and aunt continuously arranged blind dates for him, but none succeeded because my cousin was unemployed and irresponsible. Kevin rushed home. As soon as he entered, he dragged me into the bedroom, panting, "Wife, the person in the video wasn't me. I was always in the office. William can vouch for me." William was a drinking buddy of his with a similar character, so he would definitely help Kevin vouch for him. Kevin was afraid I'd discover his two-timing, so that if things with Selena didn't work out, he'd still have me as a backup. "Ha, of course I trust you." Because I had to trust him for my plan to succeed, right? But my cousin is determined to report this to the school. Even if you're innocent, public opinion can be terrifying. Kevin buried his head in his hands, sitting on the edge of the bed. His pathetic, weak appearance truly disgusted me. I regained my composure. Although this was unexpected, everything was ultimately going according to the plan I had devised when I shared the recruitment information. "How about you agree to help him arrange a job?" I tentatively suggested. Kevin immediately refused, saying that even for a contract employee position at the university, a college degree was required. Otherwise, he would have already found a way to arrange something for Nina. "We'll tell him we can only help him pass the written exam and interview. Whether he gets hired or not depends on himself," I cleverly advised, having a plan ready in my mind. "But will he accept?" Kevin looked up at me, confused. "You just handle the registration. I'll talk to Leo." I proactively took responsibility for negotiating with my cousin. My uncle and Leo smiled contentedly when they saw me hand them the registration form and the written exam notice. "Kevin is just a lecturer. We can only help to this extent. But my cousin, he's handsome and articulate. I believe my cousin won't have any problems." My uncle chuckled, pleased by my sweet words, saying, "That's only natural. But the matter of my brother borrowing money from your family, Kevin has always been bothered by it. This time, your cousin even used baseless claims to threaten him, making him angry. I'm afraid he won't go out of his way to help. I sighed wearily, trying to appear sincere while talking to Leo's family. Leo slammed his hand on the table, angrily declaring that if Kevin didn't handle it well, he would go to the school and report him. My uncle, unlike his son, was not rigid. He understood the goal was for Leo to get a job, not to destroy Kevin's reputation. He realized the hidden meaning in my words, his eyes sinking. "What are your conditions, child?" I forced a smile. "We're family, why talk about conditions? It would be best if you could repay the debt. If it's difficult, then write me an IOU. I can then use it to persuade Kevin." For my uncle, writing an IOU to my father was no different from a worthless check. After a moment of thought, my uncle immediately agreed. "Why is there interest, and such high interest?" He frowned, looking at the IOU I had written. "Oh, it's just to make Kevin feel better." I carefully put away the IOU, which had his signature and fingerprint, and patted my chest, assuring him I would persuade Kevin to do a thorough job. The divorce mediation agreement was confirmed and arrived exactly on time. That day, Kevin and I immediately took the mediation agreement to process the house transfer. He proactively suggested temporarily moving out of the house to separate the assets, house, and car. There was another reason he didn't state. Moving out would make it easier to live with Selena. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law didn't know until they saw Kevin's packed luggage. Only then did they realize he and I had faked a divorce. My mother-in-law flew into a rage, blaming me for her son's rebellious behavior. She was fiercely scolding me when Nina, crestfallen from her false joy, couldn't take the shock anymore and started having a seizure, about to relapse. I immediately called 911 and took the two of them away. Nothing should happen in my house. It would be dirty. The siren of the ambulance faded, and the silence I hadn't felt in a long time enveloped me. My mind, tense for so many days, slowly relaxed. I sighed, feeling physically and mentally exhausted. "My dear, the demolition plan will be announced next Friday. Remember to make sure you sign the documents then," my mother messaged. The day I received the mediation agreement, I had told my mother to complete the tenant transfer procedures. Otherwise, signing the contract and having the money deposited into my father's account would make me uneasy. I tried to steel myself, dragging my feet to the bathroom to wash my face. I couldn't let my guard down yet. When my eldest uncle's family and other relatives heard the news of the demolition, it would be another difficult battle. I counted the zeros after the compensation amount 3 times, making sure I hadn't miscalculated, then boldly signed. Before I could even leave the signing room, Kevin's phone rang. As soon as I answered, his mother's cheerful voice filled my ear. "Tiana, our house is about to be demolished." "Oh, wow," as if it wasn't her who was standing outside my door cursing my entire family last week. Now it was our house. I remained silent, not answering. "How much compensation? When will the money come? With this money, we can pay off all our debts. Once the debts are clear, we'll remarry. The creditors sued and have already sealed off the old house." The day they came to collect, Mom and Nina cried so much my head almost exploded. Kevin said excitedly, then slowly realized I hadn't said a word. "Tiana, my wife, say something?" I took a deep breath, then spoke each word clearly. "Kevin, we're divorced. Whether my house is demolished or not, or how much compensation it gets, is no longer related to you. As for remarrying, I don't understand what you're saying. I have no intention of remarrying you." The other end of the line was deathly silent. I guessed all 3 of them were dumbfounded, then enraged. Nina's shrill scream broke the silence. She furiously cursed me. "You greedy witch, the Ha family are scammers. I told you she had evil intentions, but you didn't believe me. Now you're drowning in debt and our house and car have been taken by her." Nina wasn't done cursing me and turned to blame Kevin. "Your house and car." "The car was bought with my income, and I used my savings to pay off the house loan. Is there any of your mother's, your sister's, or your money in there? As for the debt, whoever borrowed the money pays it back. It's very fair, isn't it?" I retorted coldly. These people, thieves crying, "Thief." Kevin finally understood, quickly snatched the phone and stammered. "When did you find out?" I chuckled, advising him and his mother not to treat others like fools in the future, or they would be taught another lesson. "Scammer, don't get so smug." His mother spat out, saying Kevin still kept the contract we signed, proving the house was joint marital property. She declared she would immediately take her son to court to demand a division of assets. "You fake divorced. The creditors won't let you off the hook. My son also has a share in the relocation compensation." I didn't wait for her to finish before hanging up. "Go ahead and sue if you dare. I'm waiting for a clear outcome. Upon hearing about the relocation, my uncle immediately rushed to my father, crying and pleading in various ways, soft and hard. Our nephew's job and marriage are still up in the air. He feels uncomfortable. Normally, he buys watches, cars, and gifts for female streamers. We just let him. Bro, he complained the shop rent wasn't enough, so he secretly mortgaged the shops to borrow money. What will you and your wife use to pay it back? That's our family's ancestral property. I can't just stand by and watch ancestral property be auctioned off by the court. In short, he wanted to use the relocation compensation from the apartment to pay off my cousin's debt. My father, with no other option, awkwardly admitted that the rental contract had been transferred to my name. As soon as my name was mentioned, my uncle immediately turned hostile. That Tiana is truly ungrateful. She promised to ask Kevin to arrange a job for Leo, but not only did he not get hired, he didn't even pass the interview. Leo went to ask Kevin about the results, and at first he prevaricated, but recently he outright told the school's security to kick Leo out. My uncle spoke until he ran out of patience, even calling me a bitch. I ignored my mother's complaints, busy filling out applications for a work visa and a family visit visa for the Philippines. Previously, Leo often went to Kevin to ask about his written exam results and interview progress. Kevin always gave vague answers. Every time Leo complained about not having enough money and asked his brother-in-law for help, Kevin would even recommend some lending institutions to him. These places had low requirements, quick disbursements, and no credit checks. Leo even thanked him for it. Recently, Kevin, thinking I had tricked him, was filled with resentment. Leo seeking him out was just asking for trouble. Before the court summons arrived, Selena contacted me first. I don't know where she got my number, but she asked to meet me. Don't mess with Professor Ha anymore. The young girl started off bluntly. Me, I don't understand anything. Please speak clearly. Selena frowned, saying she had seen Kevin's lawsuit. You're planning to remarry him, and you said you two had a fake divorce, right? He only married you to make his mother happy. He said you two had no common ground. I'm the one who makes him feel something. I held my head, thinking about how to wake up this girl who was clearly brainwashed by Kevin. Selena saw my hesitation, thinking I would use a pity ploy to make her give up, and quickly said, I'm pregnant, you're out of options, so just give up on helping others and respect their fate. I promised Selena again and again that I would not remarry Kevin. She stood up, satisfied. Oh, remember to find a good hospital for your prenatal checkup. I couldn't help but remind her. Selena scoffed, saying her Professor Ha knew how to take care of her. The court summons finally arrived belatedly. I appeared on time. Kevin fabricated a story, claiming I tricked him into a fake divorce, then seized the house and car, and hid the relocation compensation that should have been joint marital property. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law sat in the gallery, repeatedly interrupting the proceedings with emotional outbursts until the judge warned them that if they continued to disrupt the court, they would be removed. Only then did they fall silent. You two have completed the divorce registration and asset transfer procedures. The divorce and transfer of property have legal effect. Furthermore, Mr. Ha, your debt is a personal loan taken before marriage. Ms. Tu's right to rent the apartment was granted after your divorce. There is no evidence to prove that Ms. Tu is responsible for this debt. The house demolition compensation is also not joint marital property. The judge ruled. Kevin presented the contract, saying he and I had agreed he would leave empty-handed only to avoid debt, and that the house and car still belonged half to him. The judge carefully reviewed the contract and then called the enforcement agency. The enforcement agency was looking for Kevin because the creditors, after learning of his fake divorce, immediately contacted the court's enforcement department, providing new clues about his assets and requesting the freezing of the house that had been transferred to my name. The enforcement agency needed to verify the situation with Kevin. Kevin's mother had kept her word to the creditors about our fake divorce. I merely added fuel to the fire. When the creditors came to my house, I presented the court's divorce certificate and mediation agreement, stating that Kevin had left empty-handed, and challenged them. If you dare, go to the enforcement agency and ask them to freeze it. That's right, Tiana told me to divorce and transfer the house to her name to avoid debt, so I did. Kevin loudly replied when the enforcement agency, suspecting him of asset transfer and refusing to comply with the court's decision, escorted him away for judicial detention. Kevin was still stunned, shouting, "Why are you arresting me and not her? I'm not the debtor, nor am I the person to be enforced against. How can you arrest me? Haha, you fool, your whole family are fools. After arriving in the Philippines, I felt like I was back to my early days in the workforce. My small office only had 3 people. I took on the roles of sales, procurement, and marketing, often working late into the night, sometimes sleeping in the office. The busy days flew by quickly. While scrolling through social media on my way, I saw the name William. It took me a while to remember he was Kevin's colleague. He posted a few photos taken in a hospital. In one, Kevin looked 10 years older, holding a newborn baby. The caption roughly meant that life has many unsatisfactory things, and people always face many difficulties in middle age. Interesting. Logically speaking, when visiting a friend who just had a baby, one shouldn't attach such a somber caption, right? That afternoon, I went to the airport to pick up my mother. Although I had completed her family visit visa procedures long ago, due to dealing with the demolition and transfer of shops, it wasn't until now that she could come. The shops were my uncle's 2 townhouses, which my cousin had mortgaged. Due to overdue debt, the court had put them up for auction. The economy was difficult, and both townhouses had been auctioned 3 times but found no buyers. Finally, they had to be listed on the market at nearly half their market value. Just before going abroad, I held the IOU and knocked on my uncle's door. Uncle, Aunt, after the shops are transferred to me at the current selling price, this IOU will be voided. I will compensate for the difference. You also once said this is our family's home. We cannot let it fall into the hands of outsiders. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to take this IOU to court to demand payment. Please understand my lack of sentimentality. Haha, please don't think I'm still naive, okay? At that moment, my uncle's face turned ashen, his hands trembling so much he couldn't hold a pen. Half a year later, my mother seemed like a different person. Her exhaustion and fatigue seemed to have vanished. She sat in the passenger seat, full of excitement, sometimes admiring the scenery, sometimes taking selfies. I asked her if anything good had happened. My mother pouted, saying, "When you have money in your hands, everything is good. Oh, your ex-husband remarried and had a son. Guess what? The child inherited epilepsy. His wife and her family are blaming him for hiding the family's genetic condition, causing a ruckus all day long like chickens and dogs fighting. So pathetic." My mother sighed, but when she said, "pathetic," I noticed a hint of joy in her voice. I must have misunderstood. I wasn't surprised. Kevin's father and sister both suffered from this disease. It was highly likely he carried the recessive gene. Now that he had a child, it was natural for it to be inherited. That wretched family had hidden this from me before, and they would naturally scheme with Selena as well. I warned her. People who meddle in other families' affairs never come to a good end. I think this is karma. If you create bad karma, you must bear it and repay it completely. Are they bothering you? I was a little worried that Kevin's family hadn't given up on the house, and my uncle's family probably hadn't swallowed my takeover of the shops. My mother casually waved her hand. Kevin got scared after being detained. His academic title was also revoked by the university, and he was demoted to an assistant lecturer. I heard his new father-in-law is the vice principal. He's busy trying to please his in-laws. Where would he find time to cause trouble for you? As for your uncle, he had a stroke and is hospitalized. Your cousin barely visits him once every 10 or 15 days, just gambling all day, racking up more debt. So, your aunt and your father have to take turns caring for him. What else is there to not be content about? I subtly curved my lips and asked if she needed me to find a local guide to show her around. No need. I've already signed up for a Chinese tour group. I'm going to Boracay tomorrow. If you're free on the weekend, come visit me. My mother didn't even look up, still focused on the notifications from her WeChat travel group. I watched my mother for a long time, and then I saw her radiance, not just because she had money, but because she had finally started living selfishly. She realized that by abandoning the constraints of her roles as wife, mother, daughter-in-law, sister-in-law, she could still live freely as herself. And my father? He was weak, only knew how to burden his wife and daughter with responsibilities. Now that both had abandoned him, of course, I would send him enough money to live day to day, because that was my responsibility. But the feeling of being abandoned by family, of being cursed by loved ones every day for hating me, probably wasn't easy for him either. The warm tropical sea breeze streamed into the car. The rows of coconut trees along the road swayed in the sunset. I slowly realized that my new life had also begun.